Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes. And while we're waiting for some of our classmates, let's get this room going for tonight. So, Imagine Dragons. Yes, what is wrong with Imagine Dragons, Brian? Not digging the music? Well, while we're waiting to get started, I did just drop a prompt question into the chat. Feel free to tell us your music taste and what songs you are into. And then if you want to share which university you attend, and maybe which Android device do you have. If you don't have an Android device, that's okay. You can tell us that you have iOS or Apple and why you're here. Right, FIU representation. Hello. Adrian likes dance hall music. Love it. Bowie State. Hi, Joshua. Mark has an Android somewhere. University of Texas at Dallas. Hello. Riverside. All right, love it. So many schools. CUNY Hunter. Southern New Hampshire. Hi, everybody. UVA. Woohoo! Oregon State. Okay. Well, I think we have a good enough crowd.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Welcome. So we're gonna get started. Yeah, so let's get started. So welcome everybody to our second CoPath Fireside Chat event for this year. This is the second installment of our monthly series. We held our first one back in January. It was focused on cybersecurity with our cybersecurity instructor, Chris McMahon. And tonight we are really excited to shift our topic to talk about Android. And I'm really thrilled to have two amazing rock star women leaders in the CoPath community who will be here to talk to us about everything related to Android, their personal journeys, how they got started, some advice on how you all can navigate your personal journey into tech. And then we'll also dive into the technicals. So we'll definitely engage in the Java versus Kotlin debate and everything else in between. So before we begin, I do want to just introduce our speakers. I think many of you probably do know them very well, but just in case, our first speaker for tonight is Karen Chang. She is an Android engineer at Google. Karen has been working for Google on the Android team, where she helps build platform-based solutions to the global network of nearly 6 million Android app developers. So that's Karen's day job. But as many of you know, she is very much a longtime leader here at CoPath. Karen is a CoPath alumna. She actually first engaged with our community as one of our students way back in the day when CoPath was still very teeny tiny. And today she is spreading her passion for mobile development to future engineers, such as many of you, as the instructor for many of our courses. I think the inside joke we have here is, what is Karen not teaching at CoPath? So we're super excited to just, have a chance to get to know more about Karen, not just as our instructor, but as another fellow engineer. Our second speaker, who we're also super excited to have for tonight, is Deanna Hodges. So Deanna, her day job is a senior Android engineer at Instacart. Deanna is currently working at Instacart, which, in case you have not been following the news, It's a grocery delivery service app that is currently valued at over $39 billion. That's billion with a B. And it's also now the second largest US-based unicorn behind SpaceX. So it's been pretty exciting watching the ride of Instacart. Originally a full stack software engineer, Diana realized her love for Android development after taking a CodePath course. This course helped Diana land her first Android engineering role at Netflix. And since then, she has led teams to build features touched by millions of users. Like Karen, Diana is also a devoted instructor and part of the CodePath community. And we're just so lucky to have her here because as Diana was just sharing, she manages multiple jobs during her day job and is also actively teaching the CodePath community. So thank you both for joining us tonight. All right, so with that, I am going to get out of the way and I'm going to hand it over to our two speakers. Karen, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emily. Hey, everybody. I'm Karen. Thanks for the introduction, Emily. How many people here have taken a CodePath course? Are most people here part of the CodePath community already? I'm going to ask questions and try to keep it more interactive here. So I'll be asking Diana some questions. You can feel free to ask follow-up questions in the chat or in the Slido link. That's awesome. Yeah, how many people are maybe thinking about taking a CodePath course? Maybe just thinking about taking any kind of Android course or learning Android. Nice. Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to get started just by asking Diana. So Diana, you're working at some really awesome companies. You worked at Netflix, which everybody loves to use. You're working at Instacart right now, which is a unicorn company. You're doing a lot. I think it'd be interesting for everybody to kind of hear about how you got started on this programming journey and how you eventually got to where you are today.
Yeah, so my programming journey is long and complicated. I am going to keep it to the TLDR, but basically, I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I have one from Stanford, which I originally fell in love with computer science in high school. I was one of the, nerdy kids who started taking it in like 10th grade. But when I got to Stanford, I was suddenly hit by imposter syndrome. When I took CS 106A, there were literally students in my class, my beginning programming class, starting startups that were successful with like tens of thousands of dollars in seed funding. And later on, I found out that some of those students like had millionaire parents who gave them the seed funding. That actually happened with a friend of a friend who started one of these fancy startups back in like CS 106A when he was 18. And I didn't realize it then. I was like, okay, I'm doing well, I'm getting good grades, but I'm not starting startups. Maybe this is it for me. So I kind of parlayed it. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a patent lawyer or something because like I'm good at writing, like I can communicate with people. But at the end of the day, like I had recommendations lined up, all of that for law school. I was like, this isn't going to make me happy. So I got my bachelor's degree and immediately started continuing the computer science curriculum at my home state school, University of Maryland College Park. And this was like back in the day where boot camps didn't exist. You couldn't like do a 3 months like commitment and then come out with an engineering job. So I basically did the second bachelor's degree to legitimize myself and then started working full time as a software engineer after that.
Nice. And did you always know you wanted to do like Android programming, or how did you kind of decide that, hey, you're going to specialize in Android?
That's a good question. So I started out, I've worked on all different parts of the stack. Like I did even crazy stuff like C++ on the front end, which is like something you would never want to do. I did like lower level performance, like back end C++. I did full stack web development. It was actually in the pre-React days, and I actually got so fed up with it that I was like, there has to be something else I can do. I cannot manage all of these libraries and all of this disorganization like in the Angular 1.0 days. I saw CodePath and I was like, hey, why don't I take this? Like if I don't like mobile, I can always like, I didn't quit my job or anything. I can always just stick with web, but this is an opportunity. And at that time, they were doing the Android cohort at Netflix. And like back in the day, like you could just get a job at the company that was hosting your CodePath cohort. So literally my manager at Netflix was like sitting there, like scouting out the talent and everything. Like, and then, you know, he picked out 5 people who he liked from the CodePath class, interviewed all of us, gave us like the rigorous 7-round Netflix interview. Is ridiculous. And he ended up hiring me.
That's awesome. And you're still
Yeah.
working on Android like a couple years later.
Oh yeah.
Is that
I love
something? Is there something specific that you like about Android programming versus web programming? Is there any reason you've stayed with Android for so long?
Yeah, so I think I was attracted to it because of the tight ecosystem, you know? So a lot of people are complaining now that there are so many libraries you have to pull in order to build a fully functional Android app. But compared to web, it is exponentially smaller. I like having that like unified development environment. I like having the immediate gratification of, you know, building an app, installing it on a phone, like a toy app and showing it to your friends. It just feels really gratifying.
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling. I started learning Android mostly because I only knew Java, and I didn't have a Mac, and I only had an Android phone. So all my reasons were not as great as Diana's. But I do think it is a very satisfying feeling to be able to be like, hey, I have an app idea and I could build it. Because how many times has a family member or friend come up to you and been like, I have this app idea. Can you build my app idea for me?
Oh, yeah.
So being able to have that power to do that, I think, is really cool.
Absolutely.
And I think the other question a lot of people in this chat right now are thinking about is, if you were to give them advice from 5 years ago, what kind of career prep would you possibly make as you're trying to get that first Android job?
Oh yeah, absolutely build things. Build real things. I was definitely like this super study kid growing up, and I was like, oh, all you need to do is get good grades. And if you have a 4.0, then you'll land a job, you'll be able to do anything. Computer science degree is not real world programming. Maybe it's changed. I am older than you probably think, I hope. So it might have been different back in the day. It might have focused way less on real world stuff. But we didn't build a lot of meaningful projects in my, bachelor's program. So I say, like, start figuring out kind of the things that your university needs, like people in your lives need. And even if it doesn't turn out to like make any money or be the next hit app, you ship something in the Play Store. And that, especially like when interviewing candidates, like very few people actually link us to fully functioning apps in the Play Store. And it's so rare that anybody who does it just stands out from the pack. Like, it's like, I immediately want to hire you, you know?
It's funny you say that, because when I was looking for my first Android job, I also just put up a really janky app. It was like literally the worst app ever with the worst UI ever, but everybody asked about it, and they asked me how I implemented certain things, which I think during interviews really helps, right? Because you're able to have that technical conversation with your interviewers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Some of you might have heard this story already from my class, but there was this like absolute like rock star as a engineer at UMD, and he basically built a transit app to track all of the campus buses, the locations, like if there were weather delays, all of that. And the university ended up paying him to, basically add features and maintain the app. And every company wanted him, every company. Had so many offers before graduating, it was ridiculous. Like, he could have just not finished the degree and, had a, top of the line, like FANG Silicon Valley job immediately. But yeah, like that's the kind of opportunities that will be thrown your way if you build stuff early.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are always asking, hey, what kind of side projects looks the best for my portfolio? What kind of side projects should I start building, right? But I feel like it's very hard to answer that generally, because you're your own special person and you have problems that only you know about and other people know about. So you should think about the kind of problems you're facing every day and try to build an app based on that. But you talked a little bit about how when people have an app in the Play Store during interviews, you find it very more impressive, right? Is there anything else you kind of look for as you're interviewing Android engineers, like skills they might need or communication skills, attitude, anything in particular that you look for?
Absolutely. I look for, it's kind of funny because obviously, like, you have to be able to code. Like, there are people who I really liked. I was rooting for them, but they couldn't get past like the first task in the interviewing list. But, and that's kind of a deal breaker. But, so a lot of people ask about this. Instacart is very heavily biased toward Kotlin. And I feel like a lot of places are these days, the places you would want to work are using Kotlin. And good communication, listens to feedback, uses the resources available. Like, some people think it's cheating to like use Stack Overflow or Google things or whatever. I want you to Google things. Like, please do. If you're using Kotlin, don't use Java style Kotlin, use idiomatic Kotlin, like things like that. Know your RX Java. Like, this might be like nitpicky code style-y things. I honestly really, and this is controversial. I don't really care that much if you're communicating through the whole process. I think that's something that a lot of people are told, like, always say what you're doing, like, as you do it. I personally find that distracts me. I just usually state, hey, okay, here's my plan to do this. And then I code the task. And then, if the interviewer has any questions, I explain it. But yeah, don't like focus in on the laptop, focus on doing well. And then just communicate kind of afterwards. If you're really just stuck and you're just staring at a blank code editor for 5 minutes, yes, communicate. Like, just tell me what you're trying to do so I can help you. And then just like be nice and don't like be a show off. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but I had a recent interview where the person just blew me away. Like, me and my co-interviewer, he did super well, like in a record time. And, it was great. He was a little bit like, I had some like personality, maybe yellow flags. But by the time like, we got done with the task and we were like, yeah, no, like, this is great. Like, you did an amazing job. Like, we're going to let you have some time back. It was like an hour interview. He took up maybe 25, 30 minutes. And he's like, well, we didn't use like these other APIs in the library. And then I'm like, okay, no, we didn't. And then my co-interviewer was like, you can use them if you want. And then he proceeded to like waste the next 30 minutes of our time, like, honestly, and just kind of showing off. And I do respect like the talent, but at the same time, it's like, kind of read the room. Like, do you want to work with a person like that? Do you really? Some people might. I don't think most people do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think when I'm interviewing people, the biggest thing I'm looking for is, do I want to work with this person like 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, right? One of the biggest things that kind of annoys me a little bit is when I ask questions and then it's obvious the person doesn't know the answer, but they're still trying to just kind of come up with some fake answer. I don't know if you have any other red flags that you watch out for interviewers that you were just like, I wish people would just not do this when they're interviewing for Android jobs. Like, I wish they didn't code in Kotlin if they obviously didn't know Kotlin or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. It's just like, communicate like when you're stuck on something, and like, kind of don't do like weird things like we didn't use this API, or like, and then like at least feign some interest in the company. Like don't give me the impression that you're like leak coding 3 hours a day and that like this is your 15th interview this week. I just really don't care. Like, just ask about the team, ask the rudimentary questions, and then, just come off as a real human, not a leak code machine.
I love that you brought that up, because I think one of the things that also kind of annoys me a little bit is always try to save time at the end of the interview and be like, oh, do you have any questions for me, right? And a lot of times candidates are just like, have no questions. Everything was perfectly answered. And I'm like, okay, you either don't really know what this company does, or you just aren't very interested at all and you just want a job. So I think a lot of people always kind of wonder what kind of questions are good questions to ask at the end of the interview. Do you have any questions where like sometimes people asking are like, hey, that's a really good question. I should save that question for myself in future interviews?
Yeah, I think like questions I've enjoyed, because I think Instacart has a kind of unique architecture, and it's just like really good. And it was like spearheaded by one of the amazing engineers on my team. It's called Formula. And basically, it's a functional reactive framework for like managing state and event handling, and it's made my life so much easier. Just as an engineer on that team, I love questions about architecture. I like questions about how do you organize code, modularization, like performance, and then also like kind of the day to day, like what are your business concerns, things like that. Because I think that's another thing. And it might be different for you, Karen, because like your team like just focuses on like building, the platform. But like I find that a lot of engineers are just completely disengaged with the business and don't think about that stuff. But like that's what makes like engineers stand out. It's not necessarily just the technical talent. It's like understanding like what you're building, why, and like ways to make the company more money. I'm hearing some like static or feedback. Is that just me or?
I muted them.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
But yeah, that's a good point. I think our jobs differ a little in the sense that I'm kind of working on a team building APIs for Android developers. And then at Instacart, you all are building actual Android apps. But I think something that might be interesting for everybody here is if you can talk about it, it would be interesting to hear about what the Instacart interview process is like. And then maybe I could talk a little about how that differs from a big company like at Google, for example.
Yeah, sure. So basically, it's very, very practical. When I went through the process, and I later found out that I was like one of the first people to do the new process. And it was a little bit minorly disorganized. Like I actually found out when I was doing training to, do all of the interview rounds and everything, that some of my coworkers around the time that I interviewed got all of the code in advance and then like were able to see it and I didn't. And basically the person leading it was like, oh yeah, you came in and interviewed around the time like we were still working things out. And I was like, okay, well, I still made it apparently. But basically there's a remote coding interview, which is like kind of a pass fail thing. It's like a can you code type of thing. And it's been like very, very standard across many of the companies that I've interviewed at. Like basically they have you, sit down in front of your laptop, screen share, basically hit an endpoint. So write a request using like retrofit OKHTTP, hit an endpoint, parse some data, turn it into like, Pojo or Kotlin objects, and like use that data to like show some UI, probably involving a recycler view. Like that is literally, I think, the first Android interview everywhere. And so after that, some companies, so Instacart specifically, like I had a very intense UI interview. Probably like one of the more in-depth ones. Even like, gosh, I think like there was this optimization I made, like using, a spannable in a very specific way to render like this very complicated, like, typeface, like there were bolds, colors, like links in the same string, and positioning objects properly, just making it look nice and polished. So that was a pretty intensive UI interview. We also did system design too, which is something you'll probably be expected to do at any like second or final round interview, even if you're a UI engineer. So like you're going to be saying, hey, like, okay, we have all of this data on grocery items. and we need like price data. How are you going to store that price? Like, so, okay, you found a way to store the price in the database. Okay, now create like a set of endpoints that you'll use to make like fetching these items like performant. Okay, now you have to support an offline mode. How are you going to make sure that these updates persist? Like that's the sort of kind of like system design interview you could expect to get as a UI engineer. And like I don't even think that's just specific to Instacart. I think like that's what I saw the last time I was interviewing all over the place.
Yeah, that's pretty much my experience as well. I think the one thing that I do notice is that smaller companies' interviews differ a little bit from larger companies because I'm listening to what happens at Instacart for the interview process versus Google. A lot of people are wondering, are Android interviews different than like a regular software engineering generalist interview? I think at Instacart that would probably different a lot, right? Based on what role you're going for.
Yeah, I haven't done generalist interviews yet at Instacart, only Android. But previous generalist interviews that I've done back when I was like a full stack engineer were much more like, you know, data structure, algorithm heavy, like dynamic programming, all that like BS, leak code, basically. I have like, I created an account and did one leak code problem. Like, and then I was like, I don't need this. And then, I mean, I did well on my last interview cycle. So that speaks to how useful that is. But if you are a generalist, then you have to do the leak code grind for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at big companies at Google, you also definitely do have to do the leak code grind. It's unfortunately unavoidable. So at Google,
even for Android too?
Yeah, I was gonna
Wow.
say at Google, you do 4 leak code type questions where they basically give you a type of algorithm question like, hey, how do you sort this unordered array into a sorted list or something like that? And then if you're going for like a specific Android role or web development role, they have one very specific like Android task, maybe. Sometimes they might just use like the last 15 minutes of the hour to kind of ask you about some Android topics. But you could honestly get by a Google interview just doing leak code, which I think is probably the biggest difference.
Yeah.
But that's good to hear that you didn't have to go through leak code grinding to get all those amazing positions that you got.
Yeah, and Netflix was actually pretty good too. It varies by team though. I can say that I got a new manager right before I left, and he was very much about the leak code grind. He came from Facebook and he was like, yes, we will do leak code style questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides leak code, I think the other thing I always practice before I do Android interviews is, like you said, build an app that loads images in a list. It's like make a web request, load the images, and do a recycle every type of thing. Is there anything else you specifically do to prepare for Android interviews?
That's a good question. Oh yeah. So I like sometimes do like a toy model view intent implementation just in case like architecture questions come up, you know? So like just something very small and light just to show that I understand MVI and can implement it from scratch. But it never really comes up. I usually end up talking about it, but never actually building it out because like there's limited time during an interview. Like if you can only go so far with good architecture during an interview. But yeah, that's one of the other things that I do.
Nice. I think the other question a lot of people have is like, you do all this studying for interviews and then you build some side projects. When you're actually on the job, like how closely does that feel to knowledge you already have? Do you feel like you're always like still Googling for stuff and learning stuff on the job and learning on the go? Or do you feel like you have all this knowledge and you're good to go at your job already?
Well, that's a good question. So I definitely don't have all the Android knowledge, but then I'm like, oh man, this coworker introduced this new thing. I don't know about that. So I will read up on it. And then I'm also subscribed to like Android Weekly. And I never read all the articles. Like it's impossible. But you know, I just scan to see, oh, what's the latest? Oh, Stateflow, that's a thing. Jetpack Compose, like whatever, you know, like I'll just skim the list and like know what I should be abreast of. And then if I find time, then I'll look into it. Or if a coworker links an article, I'm like, okay, I've heard this twice now. I need to know this in order to be good. But as far as like day to day, I can generally just do my job. Um, Most of the documentation I end up looking at is like internal documentation, pretty much. Um, yeah, and that might have something to do with the fact that our architecture is like heavily based on a library that we built, that has its own documentation. So I rarely find myself like really heavily looking at the Android docs. Um, but yeah, I don't know. What,
Yeah,
I've been doing this for like 4 years now. I don't know. Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way. I feel like Android is always there's always so much going on in Android. There's always new stuff coming out. There's a new library coming out like every other month. There's a new way to write the whole UI of Android apps now. I feel like sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, but like you said, like keeping track of like what's going on and just knowing what I don't know is good, so that I know, oh, if I need to do this later, I could just kind of reference it later. You don't need to learn everything as it comes out, because that could be really tiring, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But on that note, do you think there's anything that developers who are trying to get into Android should know? Like, for example, if you're getting into Android right now, do you think people should be going for Java or Kotlin?
Ha, Kotlin. Like Kotlin all the way. Like seriously. I mean, I don't even mess with Java anymore. I I try to avoid Java as much as possible. I think like because I mean, so there are reasons to use Java first. Like if you are learning Android, and you are learning an entirely new programming language, it's going to be hard for you. But once you start getting comfortable with Android, immediately I say go Kotlin. Just mess around with Kotlin. Like even in the IDE, even in Android Studio, there's like a convert Java to Kotlin little tool that works actually pretty well. So you can just like kind of do that and then compare and contrast until you feel comfortable. And then just like go Kotlin all the way, because I think like that's modern app development. Like, you know, even the docs from Google are like Kotlin first. It used to be like Java first would show up. Now Kotlin is showing up. So, I mean, that's the way the tide has turned. I don't think it's ever gone back.
Yeah, I agree. At Google, they are trying to go Kotlin first. So they're building all the libraries for Kotlin first. And then they think about Java kind of as a second-class citizen now. But yeah, like you said, when you're first getting started up in Android, if you already know Java, it does make it a little bit easier to first get used to Android programming first. And then it's very easy to switch over to Kotlin. I don't know what you think, but switching over to Kotlin for me wasn't too big of a hurdle. What do you think?
No, not at all. No, it was great.
Yeah, you realize how much
Yeah.
simpler life could be.
Yeah.
Anything else you think like people specifically should study up on? Like, for example, if someone was starting to write UI right now, do you think they should start with Jetpack Compose?
I say no. I say do not start with Jetpack Compose. I don't know. Like it hasn't. I don't think that adoption amongst companies has been as gung ho as it has been with Kotlin. I definitely think Jetpack Compose is going to like pick up steam, as it becomes, you know, more stable, as companies start using it. Like we're kind of ish toying around with using it at Instacart. Basically, one of the people on my team who is great, like is always on like the forefront of the new stuff, started building some of our UI components in Jetpack Compose, like as a side thing, but we're not using them yet. It's just like, you know, here's how we could use them. So I don't think there's been like full on adoption of it yet. I think it'll happen. But I think it's like really important to kind of build the foundation and then understand why building Jetpack Compose with its like declarative UIs is better than the XML way, you know?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jetpack Compose seems like a new thing and it's shiny, so everybody wants to try it out, but there's still a lot of unknowns about it. So if you're just starting with Android specifically, it could get really frustrating if you're trying to figure out, is this something wrong with the Compose API or am I doing something wrong? So yeah, I totally agree. Maybe wait till it's more stable. It's good to know about how it exists already, but there's other things to worry about. There's a lot to learn about in Android.
Yes.
Anything else specific you would recommend people learn about in Android?
RX Java for sure. So I guess like people say that it's on its way out and coroutines are like the new hotness and everything, but like I don't think it's really going away anytime soon, honestly. It's just like I'm just like thinking about how difficult it would be to migrate our RX Java code to coroutines, and that's an undertaking I don't think like anybody really wants to take right now. So I think you're going to see a lot of it, and it's worth investing in early. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that never really learned RX Java. And then so I'm just like, okay, this works. And then so when coroutines came out, I'm like, yes, this makes it so much easier. I don't have to worry about all this other RX Java stuff.
Oh my gosh. Dude, I went through like RX Java boot camp at Netflix because actually this guy who worked there, he was like in the RX Java book, he was like cited as like a major contributor and influence. He was like a developer evangelist and everything. So he basically like took a room of like senior engineers at Netflix and is like, okay, like we are gonna build RX Java from scratch and like this is how it works, from the ground up. So basically like we were kind of schooled in RX Java.
That's amazing.
Just real hard. Yes.
I wish I went through that boot camp because I'm still confused. I still have to Google stuff all the time trying to figure out what's happening.
Yes. High learning curve for sure.
I guess on that note, is there anything specific that you've worked on in the past like 2 to 3 years that you found really technically engaging that you thought was like a really cool project, either technically or it could just have been like a cool product?
Yeah. I worked on a lot of stuff on the Netflix app that I think would like qualify. 30-second previews was really interesting. So basically like if you open the app like and see those little circles, click on it and then like you see, a short video and trailer and swipe through and everything. That was really interesting, especially making that performant. Because like you don't want to sit down and like forever wait for a 30-second thing to load. And I thought it was just like a really interesting, I don't know, I like the feature too. And it was like really kind of like figuring out strategically, okay, how do we make Netflix relevant for a phone? Like, you don't want to be watching like, a Ken Burns 6-part documentary on your Android phone. Like, you just want to, maybe watch something that you might want to watch later and like pique your interest. So a trailer would be perfect. I just wrapped up a big like cross team, like crazy multi-quarter project, migrating our authentication systems to GraphQL. And that was just challenging because, there was so much scoping, there was so much coordination amongst teams. A lot of the work was, back-end, Ruby on Rails, which I don't do. So, I had to understand and gain context there. So, it's like more tech lead stuff because there were like challenges there that you don't really get to see when you're working in your own like little Android safe space comfort zone, so that was interesting.
Nice. Sometimes I just sit on my couch and watch previews for like an hour. That's like literally all I watch. So that's amazing that you built that feature. But it was also really cool. You talked a little bit about like tech leading a project versus like being just a contributor. Have you ever thought about going into the management path at all?
That's not for me.
Well, in terms of like the tech lead role, how would you say are the different skills that you would need for being like a tech lead versus like an IC contributor? Like what kind of things does a tech lead need to think of in terms of leading a project, in your opinion?
Oh gosh. You know, everything. Like literally just like all of these, okay, so disparities between platform, because there are going to be those, performance, latency concerns. Is this big architecture migration gonna, increase like our P99 latency, which we've been like paying super close attention to, like median, P95, P99, all of that latency stuff. So you have to benchmark things, dashboards and alerting, when you're doing a big project and leading a project. How are you going to know when stuff goes down? Like, when stuff goes wrong, like, you can't just wait until people start complaining and like your signups drop and you lose $30 billion, because you messed up. Like security, also like with authentication, you have to deal with a lot of fraud, people, creating like random usernames in countries we don't even support. Like, I was like, Belarus, we don't have any users in Belarus. Like, Instacart doesn't exist there. Like, why are people signing up there? Things like that. You just really have to have like also the ability to gain quick technical context in areas where you don't necessarily contribute. I think that's the hardest part for me, because like you do tend to feel like an imposter if I'm not like directly writing the code, the Ruby on Rails, code. Then I don't feel like I'm contributing as much, even though I like my 2 cents for what it should look like, or like what we should be paying attention to might be valuable. But it can feel hard to actually not dig in and get your hands dirty. Yeah. So, and then management, like, honestly, I don't know, man. I don't like talking to people. I see my boss's calendars and I'm just like, I can't talk for that long to people.
I always think about like whether I want to go in the management route, but I'm like, there's a reason I did coding, right? So I could just do my own thing on my computer. So I don't have to
Right.
talk to people all day. But yeah, I think we're almost about time to open it up for just like questions. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to either pop it in the chat or in the Slido. And I think we might call on some people to answer them or ask your questions live. But before we do that, and while we're waiting for some questions to come in, one of the questions I think would be really interesting is, if you were just about to graduate college, like what advice would you give to your just about to graduate college self? Is there any specific
just about
advice?
to graduate?
Life advice, career
Ooh.
advice?
That's a good question. Dude, I graduated into the recession. I wonder, like, are people more optimistic and hopeful now? Like, no, I see. Oh God, that's so sad. But God, no. Dude, when I graduated, it was very demoralizing. I do realize. And then, like, if you, I say, this doesn't answer your question, I'm sorry, but like, if you have like a year or something left, do an internship. Like, do something at any costs. Like actually get some practical work experience under your belt as early as possible. God, if you're just graduating, contrary to my previous advice, do LeetCode and study. Like, seriously, that's what you're gonna have to do to get your first computer science job. Later on, once like you get a year or two under your belt and they trust you, you can kind of cruise. But LeetCode hard is my advice.
Yeah, I would agree. I wish someone told me to practice coding interviews more. I think the other advice I might have given myself is to not be so hard on myself when I don't get a job, because I'm always thinking, yes, this one was so close. I feel like everybody at interview loved me. I'm about to get a job offer. And at least the first few interviews, it was always a rejection. And there were just so many rejections at some point. I felt like, do I really want to be an engineer? Like, maybe I should just go find something easier. Like, maybe I'm just like not meant for this. But I feel like this is this failure process is something that almost everybody goes through, and just yeah,
Mm.
there's obviously geniuses who get all the offers in all the world, but I don't think enough people talk about how many rejections that a lot of people in this industry get. So not be too hard on yourself. It's probably not your fault. A lot of times it's mostly like the people making a snap decision. A lot of times I feel like it's like 50% luck, really, not really based too much on your skills.
That too. That's really good empathetic advice. And then one thing I would add is like interview everywhere. I like even if you're not interested in the company, just interview, and then rank like just interview at the companies you don't care about first, and then save the companies you like care about last. Like seriously. Yeah, like I was talking with a friend who's not like, like he's a data scientist basically. And he was like, oh yeah, like I stopped talking to Uber. I wasn't really interested. And I'm like, dude, that is not even like, I can't even calculate. Like, I would interview everywhere just to get the practice under my belt because, like, it's all about reps. It really, really is. You get the nerves out and it just becomes routine for you. And then you'll see the same things over and over again. I think one thing that I messed up in one previous interview, like came up in the next interview, and I was like, well, I know how to solve this because I messed that shit up like at the last interview. Also, listen to podcasts like Android podcasts. We don't work directly together, but he's at Instacart. Kaushik, who hosts the Fragmented podcast, Android podcast, is also really funny because when I had my interview, a question about how to store currency came up, and the answer was on Kaushik's podcast that I had listened to like a couple days ago. So I was like, well, I know what I'm using here, and I'm not going to do the like traditional pitfall thing of using like a double because Kaushik told me not to do that. Like,
The podcast is called Fragmented, right?
Fragmented.
Yeah. There's the and then there's another Android developers backstage podcast that I think is pretty good. That one is by some people I Google that I work with, so I'm a little biased, but that one is also pretty good. But I love your suggestion about just interview everywhere, because when I was coming out of college, I was like, I just want to work at these 3 companies and that's all I'm going to interview for. And obviously I interviewed for them. I didn't get it. I'm like, wow, I really should have practiced. And I'm convinced the only reason I got my first Android job was because I failed so many. I already knew all the answers to every question that anybody was going to ask me about Android. Yeah, I think that was some really good advice. Maybe we could go to some like live questions. I don't know how we want to do this. Emily, maybe do you have any people you want to call on?
Yeah, it looks like Alice has a question. Alice O question about career opportunities. Alice, do you want to go off mic and ask your question directly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Alice O'Haron. So my question is basically, can you talk a little bit about the career opportunities and maybe like, in terms of and like compensation, like opportunities for and how they're different between Android, iOS, and or just being a generalist. And are the skills like transferable between those areas, or is it kind of harder to change route once you've specialized?
Do you want to answer that first, Karen, or shall I?
I have some thoughts. I don't know too much about the compensation difference. I feel like most engineers in different fields mostly make the same based on years of experience. I don't think there's any drastic changes, but I will say that at the previous companies I worked at and at Google right now, it's a lot harder to find Android developers versus iOS or web developers. It seems like there's a lot of people in the pool for web development because that's like the first thing people usually start with. iOS development is also a bit easier than Android to get started. And I think there's a lot of iOS engineers who are eager to get into the industry as well. But Android positions are always so hard to fill. I don't know if your experience has been the same, Diana.
Yeah, so I care a lot about money. So I do like extensive research into this. So there's this great hire.com that I linked to in the chat, state of salaries report. And they actually do break down by region, by position, all of that, for like pretty much every like finer grained like field of engineering that you can think of. You might have to root around. I don't know if that like really breaks it down, but I think generally mobile developers do make more than like, say a developer, full stack engineer does. I think generally Android engineers do make more than iOS engineers. It's not by a huge amount, but I think Android is just slightly in higher demand, at least in the US. I'm not sure about internationally. But yeah, like also, I don't know if this is like, I definitely prioritize like equity as well in a company that will actually like have a chance of IPOing. And if you get in like before everybody else like finds out that it's hot, then you can like just retire early if you want, like literally. There are like even people on my team who are independently wealthy because of like previous IPOs, but they just like working for other people. And, they're like, I could retire easily. But, I think it'll become clearer to you where those opportunities are as you like get more familiar with what's out there. And as much as I hate blind, it's really good like for knowing, like people actually talk about their compensation and their offers and everything very, because it's all anonymous. It's toxic as hell. Just get on there just to be in the know,
Yeah, I agree. Especially with the money part, working at a startup where your options are probably not going to go anywhere versus working at a startup or a big company where your options are worth something, it's a huge difference. I feel like the salary difference is almost double between a company where your options are worth something versus where it's not. So if you really care about money, that is one thing to think about as you're trying to find your first job. Yeah, maybe we could take another question.
Yeah, Trang Doan here is working on a project and wants to learn more about shipping the app to the App Store. So Trang, do you want to go off mute and ask your question directly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thank you for the chat. Yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to build like a side project. My goal is to have it published to App Store. I mean, it's the project that I built, like the first very MVP version from the bootcamp, iOS bootcamp from CodePath. So I want to pick it up and keep building it. Yeah, I just want to ask, like, is there anything I should look out for in this early stage to like pay attention to publishing it into iOS? I know you talked a bit briefly about it at the end of the course, but I just want to hear more about it as well.
Sure. Do you want to go for
Sure.
it?
I could talk a little bit about this because for a month at Google, I was working on helping developers publish their apps to the Play Store, because right now there is a very stringent review policy. There didn't used to be such a stringent review policy, but now they do check for some stuff. But I think if your app is just getting started out, the process of like publishing to the Play Store, there's a CodePath guide on it actually about how to publish your first Android app to the Play Store. It could take like anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes. So once you have your app ready, you're basically ready to go. You pay the $25 developer fee compared to the $75 for Apple. Once you pay $25, you could basically just upload your APK to the Play Store and it'll go live within like 3 to 5 days. I would say don't try not to put anything that copies other people's logos. Try not to have any offensive language or anything that might harm minor, like people under 13. That would probably get your app rejected. Otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty simple process.
Yeah. Wait, did you say you're iOS? Or
yeah, it's iOS.
Okay. I don't know anything about that process. I'm sorry, but I encourage you to look into Fastlane too, which I'll link to. It basically like you can configure it to support. It works for iOS as well. Pretty much like every Android developer like uses it or should use it. It makes the deployment process like very easy and the release process very easy. Because I assume you want to go through multiple versions, like add features, like maintain it over time. And this will make it easy to like deploy like minor versions, patches, all that stuff, and like automate your upload. So for sure use that.
Nice. I didn't even know about that. Is that the one that also gives you like analytics on your app after it's published and being used?
I don't know. I don't think
Okay.
Fastlane gives you any sort of analytics. But you can, control the rollout, all of that stuff. Maybe if it does, then we're not using it, but
Oh, you can do the thing where you like publish it to like just 10% of the users and then slowly
Yeah.
roll. Okay. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was just like one line on the command line. Yeah, it's great.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Thank
we
you
take
so
another
much.
question.
Oh,
All right. So Mendel here in the chat has a question about internships and whether to consider company name or the experience. Mendel, do you want to go off mute and ask your question directly? Mendel?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So my question is that when looking for an
Hello.
internship, should just having job experience be the priority, or would you prioritize looking for like certain specific companies, or I guess like better companies per se, or is just having that job experience really the main priority?
I'm so depending on like how mentally resilient you are, you may or may not want to go to like a FANG style company or a highly competitive company for an internship. I did my internships at a pretty like chill company where I knew that I would get a job offer. Like if I, because they gave like they had set the bar really high for interns. They still did the like big old thing. They like paid for our housing. It was like it was definitely like college 2.0, with like they loved the interns, like they spoiled us because probably they knew that we were going to all be their future coworkers potentially. I had friends who went to like FANG style companies, like a woman I was friends with who went to Amazon said she like was crying every week and she ended up not getting an offer. Like if it's going to be very competitive, and people are going to be vying for those offers. If you're into that, then do that. But if you just like want a high paying job, you don't have to do that. And I say go for the safe route where they have like a structured program, like still a good internship program. You're not doing grunt work. Like we had like great projects. Like literally there were more intern projects than there were interns. So we had like a little happy hour schmoozing mixers where everybody was like, all the full-time employees were trying to suck up to us to try to lure us to their intern project. So like you want kind of that. I like that experience. It made me feel special. I am not the type of person to be like crying at Amazon. Like I just don't want that as part of my like career path. But some people are into that. Some people like the competition, but you can still go to FANG like later, like easily with a couple years under your belt, or not even that, right? It's just like getting to that internship and doing well will just open up opportunities because engineers are in such high demand period,
Yeah, I totally agree. Even though I'm working at a big company now, I'm definitely more of a startup person. I just feel like you get to do so much more and you have so much more ownership. Interns at my previous startups were able to ship features that like full-time engineers are doing. Interns at Google are not, do not get as much freedom, but it does look good on the resume as you're applying for more jobs. If you have, I feel like an internship at a more well-known company, that might get you a bit more callbacks, but I will say you probably learn a lot more at startups.
Right. So we have a question from Alexa related to motivation. Alexa, do you want to go off mute and ask the question directly?
Hi. So my question was, how do you motivate yourself to do it every day? Because I know consistency is the key in learning. So how do you motivate yourself to always learn more?
How do I motivate myself to always learn more? That's a good question. So usually I will like get a random idea and then want to execute it and then, just want to learn more because I want to build it in like the most maintainable way. Um, I'm very idea driven, even if I don't finish it, I'm just like, oh, like I have an idea. I have the skill to build this. If it's something I'm definitely not the type of person to just like in a vacuum just learn Flutter just for the sake of learning Flutter. Like I want to learn Flutter because like I want to build, this app for multiple platforms and I don't want to have to like, learn, I don't know, Swift. Like it seems like a lower barrier to entry to me. I'm very idea driven, but some people might not be that way. I don't know.
I think I'm more like numbers and goal driven. So when I want to learn something new, I usually try to say, hey, I'm going to at least write like 5 articles on this thing I'm learning. And at least for myself, if I don't reach that goal, I feel a little ashamed of myself. So that's one of the things. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm definitely going to write enough articles and publish them to Medium and get at least like this many likes on my articles. It's like a really weird way to set these weird, random, arbitrary things, but it at least pushes me to do something and get started with the process. Because I feel like once I spend 30 minutes on something, then it's a lot easier to keep going versus it's really hard for me to get started with that process sometimes. It's like hard to go to the gym, but it's not that hard to work out once you're already at the gym.
Yes.
Very cool. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And I'm going to hand it over. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, we have time for more. For the next question, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle. It looks like, Michelle, you have a question about UX design. Do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Yep. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for your conversation. I mean, I just started, Android this semester. I'm like totally into it. I'm like doing my thesis on it too. So, really diving into those things. So I'm wondering, so I have a big interest in designing things, and I'm wondering, for instance, like if you're interested in doing that, how many like opportunities are there for that in Android development? Like, for example, if I became an Android engineer, would I be doing a lot of like designing stuff, or is it mostly like, generally just making things work, or is it like a separate role, if that makes sense, like beyond just a user interface?
I will say Diana has some amazing designs for her side projects. So.
Yeah, no, I nerd out on design too. I love design. I love art. Unfortunately, okay, these roles exist. If you like really, really try to find like design engineering roles, they're totally out there. But they tend to be more niche because like most companies like this, separation of concerns between like design, product, and engineering. I think it'll for sure help you in your engineering career, but if you really want that role of being a designer in addition to an engineer, you could take a look into like prototyping. A lot of them call it prototyping roles, where you're expected to do like just the design and the engineering, just like to build out a proof of concept. Or you can go to an established company and kind of carve out that role for yourself. I've known like a couple of people who have done that successfully. One at Airbnb and one at Netflix. Netflix actually had a couple people like that, prototypers and like design engineers. But you would definitely want to like focus on a like more artistic company, like a media company, and then look for those prototyper design engineering roles. Yeah.
Some of the best Android designers I worked with used to be Android engineers. I feel like, at least for me, a lot of times when I get designs, it looks suspiciously like iOS. Android specific designs seem a bit rare. So I do wish there were more designers who understood Android engineering.
Oh yeah, huge iOS bias.
Yeah.
Huge iOS bias when it comes to designs.
Got it. Thank you. It helps because I have an Android phone too. And side note, so I remember, Diona, you were saying you considered or went to law school. So I actually worked at a patent law firm, and I don't think you're missing anything. Just saying that right now. Like, this is so much more exciting. Like, it's so much faster paced too.
Oh my gosh, yes, agreed. Like, I am so happy I didn't do that. Really, yeah. Thank you for your like justifying my decision as well through your own experience.
Yeah, I left my job like a month ago, and it was great. Like, I love the people, but just working remotely in that kind of environment didn't do it for me. I was like, I need something more exciting like this.
Yes.
All right, we have another question related to career switching. I'm going to pass this over to Juan, who is getting his second bachelor's in computer science. So Juan, do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for just taking time out of your day for this. And Diona, when you were introducing yourself and your background, it kind of resonated with me because I'm kind of in the stages of getting my second bachelor's, kind of like how you did. And
Wow.
not imposter syndrome yet, because I have zero like experience whatsoever when it comes to this realm. I do work for a startup-y company, not a tech role, but I just want, the simple question is, if you could ask yourself when you were going through this process in the very beginning, like what would be the advice that you would give your past self to have an easier time or maximize the potential of succeeding? Because right now I'm like, I don't know what's going on. This is like my first intro to like CS topic. So
Interesting. So wait, what was your first bachelor's in?
It was a business degree with an emphasis in IT, IS. So I know of stuff, but when it comes to like programming, no, that's not what we got taught. So
Interesting. So like when I did it, so first of all, like here were my concerns: money, because I had maxed out like all of the grants because like they don't give you extra grants if you already have a bachelor's degree. Like I had loans. And so I went in-state, got that nice in-state tuition. I did take like I think 2 computer science classes, not officially enrolled in the bachelor's program. Like, so you're already enrolled in the program, or are you just like
Yes.
taking classes? Okay. Were you able to transfer any of the credits from your first degree?
no, but I'm
Like
gonna be taking
0?
yeah. It's a post-bac, so it's just like I'm only gonna be doing the computer science courses.
Okay, so that's gonna like you'll finish in like what, 2 or 3 years, or
2 years, yeah.
2 years. Okay, that's awesome. So I think you're doing it right. Because I like shortened it. I think I did it in 2.5 years because I was able to transfer a bunch of credits. Because I did take like some computer science already at Stanford. And then all of my general education requirements. Get involved in groups. Like get involved in like, because like a lot of them tend to have like very good connections with companies. Like I led like a student startup incubator and the Women in Computing Society, and basically like had so many connections based on that to companies, like direct connections. So I think that's underrated. And then also focus on practical courses. The data science stuff, like you'll need that for LeetCode. Well, you'll need it. I mean, data structures are important, but focus on like stuff that will have you building things. I think one of the most valuable courses that I took in my degree program was databases. That was partially because like our big capstone project was to build like a pizza ordering system that had us do all these complicated joins and everything, but we also had to build the front end. So I didn't know Rails, but I just learned it. It it was like the worst part of my like entire second undergrad experience. I like was doing this project. I lost 10 pounds in 1 week. Like it was not healthy. But it was like the thing that made everything click for me. This is how all of these moving parts work together, and that I built something that I can show somebody that looks like a real world thing. So definitely like screw the theoretical stuff. Don't take compilers. Like don't take compilers. Like, you know, take databases, take maybe operating systems, take like anything that will have you build a project that you can show off. Focus on that for sure. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I'm going to shift a little bit now to a question that a lot of our international students tend to have. I'm going to throw this over to, okay, I'm so sorry. I am probably going to butcher your name. Actually, I'm not even going to try. It's spelled
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, hi. So I was wondering because you know, I search for a lot of internships, but there's always a note that says that it's not available, or if you're looking for sponsorships, the job is not available to you. So I was wondering if you all knew like companies, startup companies that employ international students. It's kind of a hassle with us. I don't.
That is a good question, because I imagine it's more complicated with internships than full-time roles. Because like a lot of full-time places, like will offer you visa sponsorship. I would, a lot of companies are moving more toward like the remote for all thing. I know at least like Spotify is one of them that will actually let you work internationally because you know they're based in Sweden. Um, I that's a hard one. So are you just are they just saying, you know, like we won't accept you even for 3 months because we can't pay you legally, or like is it a payroll issue, or what is it?
No, they don't really say. It's just at like when you're reading the job description, I mean you finish reading everything, and then there's the eligibility requirements, and it says it's only for residents and citizens, and I mean so you don't even have the chance to even go to fill in the application.
I don't know, Karen, can you comment on that? I don't know too much.
I will sometimes applications just say that, and then you could still apply even though you're not a citizen. I know you probably might have to be a student in America, but yeah, sorry, I don't have any good ideas about this, but this sounds like a cool side project for someone to build out some kind of website where all the international students could look for internships.
Yeah, like I would also be careful. I'm sorry, Karen. I would be careful with just applying anyway, because I did remember like in my first internship, like a dude from South Korea just disappeared. He was part of my internship class and he just like disappeared from boot camp within 3 days. And basically I learned later it was because his visa situation was messed up. So he had gotten all the way there to the offer. And I guess when they were doing all of his documentation and everything so they could pay him, they said, no, we can't hire you. Like, and he was just gone.
Oh, no.
I was just like, what happened to this dude? Like, what happened? Because it was a very tight knit thing, and his absence was noticed. So you don't want to get that far and then have to start from scratch.
That's good to know. Just ignore what I said. Listen to Dion.
Okay. Shifting a little, let's talk about the process from intern to full-time. I'm going to throw this over to Mohammed O. Mohammed, do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. So I'm currently working remotely as an intern for like a mid-sized company in Boston remotely. So it's a 6-month internship. And so far from what I've seen, I'd like to stay for full-time and just want to know how to be on track for that. If I don't know if you personally been on a team deciding who to convert, or if your manager asked you about like input about what interns you think are good for conversion. So things I should be looking out for implicitly, technical or interpersonal.
I have some thoughts about that. I used to, at my startups, I used to hire interns and then kind of decide whether we want them to return for full time. I think one thing that I wish the interns did more was tell me in the beginning, hey, I might be thinking about a full-time role. What kind of projects will I need to land, or what are my expectations if I want to eventually get a full-time offer? Because if I don't know what they're trying to do, I don't have a good way to guide them towards what they're trying to accomplish, right? So always check in with your manager and being like, hey, if I want a full-time offer, am I on the right track? What do you think I can do to help my chance to get a full-time offer? Just always being in communication with your manager. And I think the other thing that made me not want to hire someone back as a full-time person was those interns who didn't seem to really care about landing their internship project. So they're just, their mindset was, I'm just here for 3 months. I just need to be here for 3 months, do the work I'm assigned here for 3 months. I don't really need to land my project. Doesn't seem like a long time kind of thinking to me. So that kind of turned me off a little bit. I don't know if Deanna, you have other thoughts about that?
Yeah, like, so when I was doing my internships, I like went in hard. I was like, I'm gonna walk out of here with a full-time offer for sure. And so, you know, from the start, when I don't know Mohammed, what is the project? So you've already selected your project, or you've been assigned a project, like you're already deep into the internship, you said?
Yeah, so we don't technically work with projects. We work on low estimated tickets in the sprint.
Okay. So I, you know, would continue doing like the work that you're assigned, you know, with like vigor, you know, obviously like do well, and for sure ask for like bigger and meatier projects. But you can only do that when you've like set the tone and like prove that you can do the work. You know, really kind of like get to know everybody in the company, like try to be like in the mindset of somebody who already works there, you know, like and then, you know, people might have differing opinions on this, but absolutely fraternize with your coworkers. You know, if you drink, like drink with your coworkers, go to like happy hours, even if you don't drink, like be social, be a member of the team. You kind of have to do that, I think, for, you know, people to start seeing you that way. You want people to see you as like indispensable and like, hey, you know, oh, Mohammed is going back to school. No, like, you know, we want him here. Like, we want him to come back. Like literally, and, you know, I'm not like bragging per se, but like, I think I carved that niche out for myself. Like I was, you know, had my director, he was like, oh, Deanna, like, do you want to go to the New York office? Like, let's go to New York. And then he introduced me to like all of these higher ups in the companies and like, you know, getting way too drunk and then like having a $400 dinner at a restaurant while I was wearing like jeans and Chuck Taylors and like a college student and not knowing how to fraternize with like directors and VPs. But like, you know, these opportunities, like it's fun, yes, but it also makes you like, everybody wanted me to take the offer, you know, and celebrated when I came back for full time. You kind of want to be that person, right? And like not whatever you have to do, but you know, try to find your buddies within the company who you can be that person to. But the work comes first. The work absolutely comes first. Yeah. Somebody else was paying for it. Yeah. I just ordered a salad because I felt bad. I was like, $12 salad, please.
All right. So talking about work, Benson has a question about projects and when to ask for help. So Benson, do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you for like a really interactive session. I did love it a lot. So my question is in regards to when you should like ask for help when working on a project, since you don't want your coworkers thinking that you're not like self-motivated. At the same time, you don't want to like burn out yourself if a coworker could like help you with like a certain project. That's why I want to like know where do you like draw the line of I should ask for help, I should grind this on myself on my own. Like when do you like how do you decide?
Do you want to take it, Karen? This is
I
a
was-
classic problem.
I was gonna say I'm not a very good person at asking for help either. Also because I probably a bit because of the imposter syndrome, my bill will be like, wait, Karen doesn't even know how to do that. But some things I do try to do before I ask for help is at least I try to do as much as I can so that when I go ask for help, I could be like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. I tried this thing, it didn't work because of this. And I tried this other thing, it didn't work. And then I tried this third thing and then I got this result. What I'm really trying to do is this. So how would you advise I go forward with it? Because at least it shows that I put in some kind of effort before I reached out for help. Something that I didn't like from interns that I managed before was some interns would come ask like 20 questions a day, which sometimes like totally okay, right? Interns aren't supposed to know anything. But at some point it was obvious that they didn't even try to solve their own problem, which made me not want to help them as much. So putting in some effort and then showing that you put in that effort, I think everybody will be really willing to help you and nobody's going to think you don't belong there.
Yeah, like I have the same problem. If I get stuck on something for like an hour, I will ask somebody, you know? You got to ask somebody. And then like when you ask, like couch it in, I tried this, I tried that, just like Karen said, like show that you attempted the problem. And then like, I don't know, like as long as you're not asking 3,000 questions and like, you know, you need somebody to handhold you through the work, people are generally going to help you. And then like you might want to do a reversal. I think I asked a question like right before this started. I was like, oh, you know, has anyone successfully like parsed like, you know, GraphQL responses and like for unit tests and blah, blah. And people like a couple coworkers, because my coworkers are great. They were like looking into it for me. I was like, psych, oh, I did it in a PR already. Haha, here you go.
I love
Just
that.
like want to do the reversal on them.
Okay, so would you say like in a work environment, it's both of like I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Let's say for example, there's a time you need help, you could like volunteer so that next time you could help me. I think like the guy who is always asking for help should be like in tandem. Like you ask for help, I ask for help. Like, do you think that's how it's supposed to be?
Yes, I think you answered your own question too. Like, always be the person helping, like jumping in, even if you don't know the answer. Like, you know, if somebody's like, oh, is this working for, like, not working for me or like everybody else? Like, those questions, like, jump in and help. Like, you know, if people like, if they like you, they're willing to help you. You know, if you're the person who's always taking and never giving, it's like a relationship. You're gonna get dumped. Like nobody's gonna like you, you know?
Thank you very much for the answer.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive back to some of the technical topics that you had touched upon earlier. Justin Yue here has a question about Jetpack Compose. Justin, you want to go with mute?
Hi. So when I first started Android dev, we all start off with like, XML and working with the view system. But quite frankly, I find I kind of felt a little bit disillusioned with it. I didn't really feel that I enjoyed making good UIs with it. So I left Android for a while, just messing around with different technologies, and I fell in love with the declarative programming in Flutter. So I loved it. As I said again, I loved it. And then when I found out Android was about to implement it, Jetpack Compose, I was like immediately excited, and I've been like really enjoying learning about it. And with that being said, do you think Jetpack Compose is gonna completely take out the view system, or do you think like because of interoperability between the view system and Compose, do you think maybe they'll just coexist?
What do you think, Karen?
I think it's going to be hard for code bases to ever get rid of all those XMLs. I mean, the Android apps for the past like 10 years have been built with XMLs. But I do think Google is investing a lot into Jetpack Compose. So for example, they're not putting as much effort into maintaining recycler view anymore. They're not putting as much effort into maintaining the motion layout stuff anymore. They're putting a lot more effort in Jetpack Compose. So I do think it is going to be the future, but I don't think XMLs will ever be fully phased out.
Yeah, it's going to be a long process. I don't know if this is an adequate comparison to like Java being phased out with Kotlin, but I think it's going to take a long time for developers to fully migrate. They've been so conservative about like even trying out Jetpack Compose in the first place. It might just like, there's just so much coupling between, the actual programmatic, like, UI logic and the XML, that for a company to disentangle that, it's a huge undertaking, and I'm not sure most companies would think it's worth it. Because like honestly, like going back to the point I made before, this is a business. Like, you're working for a company to make money. Are they going to invest for their valuable, highly paid engineers to migrate from XML to Jetpack Compose for no real good reason? No. So I think there needs to be a business and performance case. Some of the performance benchmarks I've seen for Jetpack Compose have been like pretty good, but I don't think like engineers sinking their time and effort like for several months doing a migration, I don't think it's like that valuable. You know what I'm saying?
Does Instacart have like plans around Compose right now?
It's mostly like a person on my team who's very excited about Compose. I mean, everybody's excited about Compose. Everybody is, like every Android developer is, but like he is taking on this like huge amount of extra work to like do this proof of concept, and share out his learnings. I don't think anybody's asking him to do this. I just think he's like passionate about it and doing it in his spare time, in addition to his normal work. So I think you definitely have to, have those types of people, and maybe you're that type of person on your team who's willing to kind of spearhead it and then fall on your sword if everything goes haywire, I definitely know that there's some people, I think like Alex Lockwood, who's like a good person to follow on Twitter. I think I saw that he was like putting together some document on a case for, I think he works at Lyft, for using Jetpack Compose. Yeah, I've seen a few things going around, but I don't think it's gonna really, people are gonna commit to it. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that response. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. So Jose here has a question about what happens after you learn Kotlin and the basics of Android. So Jose, going to toss it over to you. Please go off mute.
Hello. Well, thank you for making this talk. And also I took a CodePath interview prep course last year, I think. And definitely it was like life-changing. Like I feel like I've learned so much about the industry, like about culture and all these other aspects to it just besides programming. But yeah, so recently I've been helping like an open source project, and I just feel like I've learned that there's so much I don't know. And I just wonder, like once you start as a junior developer, like what do you guys usually focus on? Like, do you guys focus more on like learning more like about the more about Android? Like, should I learn Flow? Should I learn like more about these new things that are coming out, or should I just focus more on object-oriented design patterns, like having cleaner code? Yeah, I'm not sure you guys have any experience with, like, I don't know, any advice for this.
I could talk a little bit about what I try to focus on when I learn new things. For me, I really need some kind of motivating factor when I'm learning something else outside of work. Otherwise, it's hard for me to code outside of my regular 8 hours. So when I try to look for something new to learn, it's usually something that I'm interested in. So for example, I'm more interested in like animation APIs on Android. So those are some things I would look into more: how to do more performant animations, how to do cooler animations, how to do it in different ways. For example, like learning about object-oriented programming or flows and stuff like that. if I don't have an immediate use case in my mind, I feel like I'm not going to be very motivated to put in as much work as I should to learn something. So I probably wouldn't do it. I don't know. Deanna probably has a better answer for this.
Well, this isn't necessarily something I do, but if I had time, I would do it. I subscribe to this newsletter. It's called Screen Lane. I can try to find the link. They basically, I subscribe to it because it has like cool, interesting UIs. It shows like, mobile app, mobile web, all of, different platforms and like really kind of innovative looking UIs. Like I would take a look at that and kind of play around with it and see if I could recreate them. I think honestly, like you're going to hear this from everybody, but just like building stuff. And then seeing if you can use, say, if you're interested in Flow, use that. If you want to learn about coroutines, use that in your app that you're making. It might be terrible and you might be like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then that's what Git revert is for, but I agree with Karen, like you kind of have to have a reason to play around with these new tools, and creating like your own little toy app, even if you never publish it, is a good way to start doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. I understand. Yeah. Learn as you need, and that gives it more purpose. Yeah. I was just wondering because there's so many things that I'm like, I don't know which path to take, but I understand now better. But thank you.
And then subscribe to Android Weekly and see what keeps popping up. That's what I know. Okay, I should start learning this. Okay, I have this app that I'm playing around with. Why don't I try to implement MVI using Stateflow? Like that's literally what I did for a little app that I have that I'm probably never going to publish.
I think it's totally normal to feel overwhelmed. I still feel overwhelmed by everything that I feel like I should learn all the time.
All right. Well, it is 5:59 p.m. Pacific time over here. So unfortunately, all good things do need to come to an end at some point in time. Karen, Deanna, any sort of last words of advice you want to share with our students?
Ooh.
The one thing you want them all to remember.
High pressure. You go, Karen.
I think if I had to share one thing, it would be going back to what I said a little bit earlier, which is don't be too afraid of failure. Just go for what you think you're gonna like. And if it doesn't work out, don't be so demotivated that you stop trying. Just keep trying. This industry is tough in a lot of different ways. So just keep moving forward.
Stay adaptable. I think that'll serve you well just in life in general. Take your ego out of it, and then just adapt to whatever new situation you're in. You'll surprise yourself for sure.
Beautiful. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for not only joining us, but staying with us all the way until the very end. Thank you all. For those of you who are interested in taking CodePath's classes, we do have classes running every semester. We also have the technical interview prep class coming up this summer. Sal dropped the link in the chat, which we'll also email to this group afterwards. We'll also share the recording from tonight. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening. Thank you all so much. And you know where to find us if you need anything.
Great.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a good night.
Good night.